What's up everybody, Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week. And before I get into all the news this week, I first want to mention I did cover the Cadillac Celestiq already earlier this week. I posted up my actual in-person walk-around video of that vehicle that I filmed last week. It's so cool. So definitely check that out if you're curious about that. But moving on here to all the news this week. So first off, we got some stuff from the Paris Auto Show, which I'll talk about in a minute. But before we get into that, CarBuzz discovered this week that Lexus has trademarked the LFR name in Europe. And so, trademarks, you never really know. Sometimes companies actually use them, sometimes they don't. It's always a mystery, not a guarantee by any means. But, there's all these rumors of an LFA successor coming. And so calling it LFR, could certainly make sense, especially if it's going to have a racier component to it, or it could stand for revolution or something like that if it's, electric. We'll have to see. But, the only mystery is, okay, now we possibly know the name for this, future LFA successor, but as far as what's going to power it, that still is a mystery. So it's kind of split off into two different rumors. There's rumors that there's one car that will be electric, but that has been rumored previously to not come until 2029, and that's going to use solid state batteries and be all electric and stuff, and that'll be a separate car. And then there's also rumors of something using a hybridized twin turbo V8 from the LC500 race car version, and that could be what this is, and that maybe we won't see any kind of LCF, even though that's also been kind of like teased and rumored and been an on-again, off-again thing that's been spied and all that. So it's very foggy as far as what the future holds for, any kind of Lexus supercar or sports cars down the road here. But at least we now know that they're at least considering the LFR name enough that they want to protect it. So interesting to hear that. And as far as, names go, I think LFR, if they have to use jumbled up letters, I think LFR is a pretty cool combination of letters and sounds pretty exciting. So anyway, cool to hear that. For another interesting discovery here, Automotive News is reporting that their people familiar with the matter claim a Hummer EV that's going to be a smaller version, kind of think, H2 and then H3, something like that already exists in GM's California design studio, and that it's a priority project that has a good chance of going into production. And I mean, this makes a ton of sense. Obviously, there's over, I think, 90,000 people that have pre-ordered the Hummer EV, and that's for this expensive $100,000 thing that's massive and all that. So if they had something that's, smaller, cheaper, I think that would be also a grand slam. And, clearly they want to, capitalize on the popularity here of the Hummer, even though it is getting more and more controversial by the day. But, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like it'll almost certainly get greenlit, especially since it'll be easier to do, since it'll be on the Ultium platform, and they can either, use a downsized version of what they have in the current Hummer, or they can even use, a variation of the platform, they have adapted for the Silverado EV that's coming and stuff, which has, less batteries and, less extreme capabilities, but also still very impressive. There's a good chance something like that could turn up as well. And but anyway, very interesting to hear that rumor, and stay tuned for my review of the Hummer EV next week. I'll be posting it up next week. You're not going to want to miss my reaction to that Watts to Freedom launch mode in that vehicle. So stay tuned for that, and be sure to subscribe as well so you don't miss it. Moving on here to the Paris Motor Show, though. This week, was the show, and while I'll skip most of the vehicles that we won't be getting here in the States, there's a bunch of stuff from all the, French brands, but it would take me a whole another 30 minutes to cover all those. So I'm just going to stick to the stuff we will be getting here in the States for the most part. So first off here, Porsche has brought back the Carrera T for the 992 generation here that we saw it, previously in the last generation. So this is the 2023 911 Carrera T. So it sticks to the same formula as before, losing some weight and giving you some of the handling goodies from the S on the slower base car for those that, don't need a ton of power. It's also the only way to get the manual with the base engine, since the 992s previously required you to go for the Carrera S if you wanted the manual. And that manual is part of the weight savings, along with less sound insulation, thinner glass, a smaller battery, and no rear seats. It adds up to 100 pounds of weight loss compared to a base automatic Carrera, and 44 pounds less than the manual Carrera S. You can get rid of most of the savings by optioning the automatic and the rear seats back in if you want, though. Other T enhancements are a mechanical limit slip diff with torque vectoring, adaptive sport suspension, gray Carrera S wheels, gray stripes, sport chrono package, sport steering wheel, sport seats plus, and the sport exhaust. The T also unlocks the option to get the lighter bucket seats and rear wheel steering, and it runs the same 3-liter twin turbo flat 6 that still does 379 horsepower and 331 pound-feet of torque, just like that standard car. And while those numbers aren't large, it still manages to put up an impressive 4.3 seconds 0 to 60 time with the manual and 3.8 seconds with the PDK, which is only a few tenths of a second slower than the Carrera S that has over 60 more horsepower. It's just blowing my mind that, with under 400 horsepower, they're doing a sub 4 seconds 0 to 60 time. It's just crazy. So anyway, prices start at $118,050, which is about $11,000 more than a base Carrera, but it's also about $13,000 less expensive than a Carrera S that would have those options on it, making it, really great savings if you can sacrifice a little bit of speed, which again, you're still getting a vehicle that'll do a sub 4 seconds 0 to 60 time, or 4.1, with the manual. I just think it's a really solid value. It's one of the few really good values as far as Porsche special editions go, and so great to see that that's made a return. Rolls-Royce has debuted the Spectre this week, which is their first electric vehicle and the start of a bold new chapter, according to Rolls-Royce. So it brings a two-door back into the Rolls lineup here again, but it shares nothing with the old Wraith, with this vehicle riding on a variation of the same new platform that underpins the other newest Rolls-Royces, while also actually being 30% stiffer than any of those previous Rolls-Royces. It'll also debut a new Spirit of Ecstasy here that's designed to be more aerodynamic. Other benefits of going for the electric thing here for Rolls-Royce is, in addition to the complete lack of engine sound, is that the roughly 1,500-pound battery pack also functions as sound deadening, likely making it the quietest Rolls-Royce ever, which obviously for them, that's everything. Like, quietness is one of the top things they go for. So, I mean, this is really like the perfect thing in Rolls-Royce's mind. Also, it's going to probably be the heaviest Rolls ever, weighing 6,650 pounds now, which is about 1,300 more than the Wraith, and I believe that's, at least 500 or so pounds heavier than even a Phantom. So, I don't know what the Cullinan weighs, but I mean, this has got to be, I think, the new heaviest Rolls, which also they say will help with NVH as well. The more weight you have, the more it kind of dampens a lot of those movements and motions and stuff. There also weren't any specs shared for the battery yet, but they did say it'll do 260 miles of range on the EPA testing cycle, which is surprising. Usually they lead with the WLTP numbers that are higher and also more unrealistic. And that is notably less than the Cadillac Celestiq, but I'm sure there's still not going to be many cross-shoppers between the Rolls and the Cadillac, unfortunately for Cadillac. And anyway, power-wise, it'll do very similar numbers to the Celestiq, though, doing 577 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque, along with a 4.4 seconds 0 to 60 time. It'll arrive next year, and while pricing hasn't been confirmed yet, it'll likely start well above even the $300K of the Celestiq I featured earlier this week. So I think I saw $400,000 floating around as being potentially the starting price for this thing. Certainly, wouldn't be a surprise. And so anyway, very cool to see that. And the one French vehicle I will cover here in the update is Renault's sub-brand Alpine revealed the Alpenglow, which is way too awesome looking to skip over. And so it's this wild concept car they say hints at what Alpine cars will be like tomorrow and our vision for motorsports going forward. It's a bummer, though, this actual vehicle probably won't ever be produced, but it looks so cool that I hope, some form of something of it, translates into a production vehicle. The theoretical powertrain for it sounds awesome too, with Alpine saying it's powered by hydrogen combustion, theoretically again, but a production race car could be a possibility as well that runs something more traditional, and this shape is very much like Le Mans car kind of looking, so there's a potential there maybe something like this will show up in a race car or something. But regardless of what they end up doing with it, it's a great showpiece. I'm sure it'll be a huge draw at the motor show, and very cool to let the designers run wild with this very fun concept. So cool to see that. But for a production vehicle here, Mercedes has revealed the 2024 EQE SUV, showing off the interior a few weeks ago. Now we get the full reveal of everything else. The styling is interesting, but it falls in line with other EQ models, with their very heavy focus on aerodynamics, which requires this very, rounded shape, but does provide a 0.26 drag coefficient, which is very impressive for sure. And it's 5.5 inches shorter than the sedan version, but still shares most of the mechanicals with the sedan under the taller body there. And so it runs a 90.6 kilowatt hour battery that can do 342 miles of range on the easier WLTP test cycle. So again, that will be lower, for the EPA here, but it should still be close to 300 miles. But otherwise, Mercedes hasn't revealed any of the specs for the regular versions of the EQE SUV yet, but they'll likely get the same mechanicals as the sedan, meaning a rear-wheel drive version with 288 horsepower and an all-wheel drive version with 402 horsepower. They also revealed the AMG version and did provide its specs, with it getting up to 677 horsepower in boost mode and 617 horsepower normally, along with a 3.5 second 0 to 62 mile per hour time. And the AMG version will also get a sportier air suspension, an active anti-roll bar, rear wheel steering, and sportier looks inside and out. They all have interiors that are some of the most beautiful and luxurious in their segment, and the Hyperscreen is also available, although only for Europe in its first year for some reason. Guessing it's supply related stuff, but so if you're an American, you're gonna have to stick with the smaller screen for the first year here. And for those that do want the first model year, it'll be built in Alabama, and the regular one is scheduled to arrive in the first half of 2023, with the AMG version following in early 2024, and there's no pricing for it yet. And there's also a ton of other features. Mercedes has like I think it's a 35-page press release on this thing, so I mean, you can go to their media site and read that if you really want all the details on it, but I mean, they go into excessive detail about every single little aspect of the thing. But there's lots of cool, exciting technology that debuted on the EQS that's trickling down and stuff like that. But anyway, very impressive, nonetheless, and hopefully they will price it more affordably so that all these electric Mercedes aren't essentially 100 grand each. But anyway, yeah, cool to see that. And speaking of affordable Mercedes EVs, for those wishing for a more affordable Mercedes EV, it sounds like 2024 or maybe 2025 is when you'll possibly be getting it. So Autocar is reporting this week that an entry-level EV sedan inspired by the Vision EQXX will be put into production. And so they say it'll be about the same length as the current CLA, which means it's going to be fairly small, like a subcompact vehicle, maybe compact, but I think it's going to be subcompact. And they say it'll likely provide as much interior space as the C-Class because, of the electric, perks there. That sizing puts it pretty close to a Tesla Model 3, so that's going to be their primary competitor, as well as, I'm guessing like the BMW i4 and stuff like that as well, which is a little bit bigger. But anyway, this car, they also say will debut their newest EV innovations, as well as supposedly introducing stuff like a lighter and more power-dense battery, a lighter, smaller, and more efficient electric motor setup. And the AMG version will also even get a version of the deployable diffuser that the EQXX had. And so again, this is just a report from Autocar, nothing confirmed, but very promising. And again, if they keep the pricing actually reasonable and they keep it at Tesla Model 3 kind of pricing, then that could be something impressive, especially if it actually has this next level, next generation kind of battery tech and stuff. So we'll have to wait and see, but very interesting to hear that. And getting to some more normal, minor debuts here for the model years and more affordable, relatable car news here. Toyota has detailed more of the changes for the Corolla for 2023 here. So back in June, they debuted the refreshed styling, the new headlights and all those types of things. And they also back then also announced that the Corolla Hybrid will be getting an all-wheel drive option. I talked about that back in June as well, but now we have the specs and some of the other details here. So first, before I get into that though, I have to say that the saddest news here in this update is they did confirm that the Corolla is dropping the manual unless you go for the GR Corolla. That of course is only manual, but the regular Corolla has dropped the manual, which is really sad because they debuted it with the manual. They were really supportive of the manual. They had the intelligent manual transmission thing to really help teach people manual and make it a little easier for people to learn. And they were really supportive of it. And I guess it's just like everything else. I'm guessing the sales numbers weren't strong enough to justify keeping it around. And so another big loss. Corolla's had a manual its entire history. And so the first time to not have a Corolla, again, aside from the GR version, but a regular Corolla without a manual is really sad. I enjoyed it. I've had them for a week, with the manual, and it was a fun little thing to zip around in. It's not the best manual out there, but it was just nice to have it with a manual. And so I'm a little sad about that. That's a pretty big thing and historically, I guess. And so anyway, there's that. So if you want a manual Corolla, you got to go for a 2022 or earlier and get them soon because I'm sure there's not many of them out there either. The good news, though, here for the Corolla is that it gets some nice improvements for 2023 with slightly revised styling and upgraded infotainment software that now does the wireless smartphone integration. That all-wheel drive hybrid version doesn't do any more power than the non-all-wheel drive hybrid, unfortunately, but all hybrids do get a new setup here. So they get 13 more horsepower and 10 more pound-feet of torque this year, thanks to more powerful electric motors. but the penalty of that extra power is lower fuel economy by a lot. Like so much so that I don't know why they actually changed it, because the fuel economy is dropped by a shocking 9 mpg on the highway, 3 less in the city, and 5 less combined. Now doing 50 mpg city, 43 highway, and 47 combined. Still high numbers, but I mean, again, it's like, who's going to want the 2023 whenever the 2022 gets such better fuel economy? Like, no one buying a hybrid Corolla cares about horsepower. So this is a real head scratcher as far as why they did this, now that we know the specs here. And also, if you go for that all-wheel drive version, you drop your fuel economy by 3 more mpg for the city and the combined ratings, and 2 less on the highway. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they did that. They did say that the hybrid also has swapped the nickel hydride battery for lithium-ion battery. But, you know, I really don't know why they shot themselves in the foot with the fuel economy thing. It was almost like so bad, it's like, is that a typo? But I don't think it is. Otherwise, moving on, there's a new infrared edition for the hybrid that gives you the Gas SE's sportier suspension, along with unique accents in paint. And there's other minor tweaks and price increases, of course, but that's the bulk of the changes. What I will say, though, is I'm very happy that they have kept the base LE trim around, you know, because other companies are getting rid of their base trims, and I'm going to be talking about that for the next few stories here. As to the fact that, you know, there still is a Corolla that starts in the low 20s is great. And so anyway, interesting to hear that, but very sad to see the manual go away for the Corolla. But for the Save the Manuals crowd, there are some good news stories to talk about here this week about the manual. So thankfully, BMW doesn't have any plans to drop their manual transmissions from the M cars that currently have it, at least. So in a new interview with CarBuzz, BMW M CEO said, the manual is unfortunately not so widespread anymore. It's more in the segments of the M2 and the M3 and the M4. And for those cars, we continue offering the manual, and those cars will run for a long time until the end of this decade. But supposedly it was a fight with another M executive saying that M's engineers didn't understand why they do a manual since the auto was faster. But thankfully, all the customer inquiries and actually petitions that some of these fans put together, got a lot of signatures, that all got the attention of M, and that convinced them to keep offering it. And so, you know, this is something I've heard from a lot of the German, you know, companies is, you know, over the past few years. It's like, well, why would we offer a manual? It's slower. And it's this like binary thinking of like, okay, well, this is faster, so therefore it is better. And, you know, I'm glad that slowly, you know, Porsche has also figured out that it doesn't matter anymore about the performance. I think as everything gets, you know, more and more electrified, hopefully these straight line performance bragging rights will matter less, because everyone can just go buy a Tesla if they want to go fast in a straight line. And people who actually want to have an engaging experience, you know, it will really, I'm hoping, kind of bring back a, you know, resurgence of the manual. And we'll see if that turns out to be the case or not. But, at least as far as, you know, as long as gas engines stick around, that's probably going to be the limiting factor. But anyway, so yeah, we'll see, you know, and also this is subject to change, you know, I mean, beyond 2030, obviously things going to, you know, go more and more electric most likely. So you don't count on anything beyond this generation of vehicles. And also it might not last even, you know, until the end of these generations of these vehicles, because, you know, management changes, people change, you know, their minds or whatever, you know, things aren't guaranteed. So, you know, if you're on the fence, I certainly wouldn't wait to get one of these manuals. You know, support the cause, go buy them in the manual, send that message that, you know, people are actually willing to back up this opinion with their dollars and, you know, put their money where their mouth is and buy these vehicles. And hopefully it, you know, further justifies the BMW that these are worth keeping around, even if they aren't the fastest in the 0 to 60 times and stuff. So, you know, great to, you know, see that they are keeping them around now, and so good to hear that. And some other manual news, another one that's coming back, Mini has brought back the manual transmission option for their vehicles after briefly getting rid of it earlier this year. Supposedly it was just because of supply issues, but again, you know, every manual vaporizing left and right, you know, people got a little nervous. I don't know the Mini's going to lose the manual. Thankfully, it's back. It's available now as a standalone option here on the regular Cooper, Cooper S, and the John Cooper Works versions of the Mini. And there's a bunch of other trim and options shuffling for 2023 that's honestly overwhelming to kind of, you know, put it all out there. So I'll just say the other big change here is pricing. So it's bad news for those wanting a cheaper classic trim of the Mini, because that it dropped that base trim here for the Minis. And along with that dropping of the base trim, which by the way is not just for the regular Cooper, but basically everything in the Mini lineup doesn't get the base trim anymore. So that means base price increases of over $5,000 for the Mini Cooper, now starting at $29,450, and the rest of the lineup gets similar increases between $4,600 and $5,400 for each and every trim, or each and every model. So Yeah, it's crazy, but for those that are not discouraged by the higher prices, that weren't planning on getting a base model, they'll begin production in November for these new 2023 Minis, and you'll be able to get them again with a manual. So great to see Mini bring back the manual and keep it alive. But getting back to the loss of base trims here, another car losing its base trim for 2023 is the Honda Civic. So I'm guessing it's the same reason. Actually, when I was on the CR-V hybrid launch, a week or so ago here, they told us the CR-V is losing its base trim. And for that, they said it was because none of their dealers said that anyone wanted an LX, basically. Like hardly anyone was saying, oh, I really want a CR-V with the LX base trim. And so that's why they're saying they got rid of it. And so I'm guessing they're going to use that same justification here for the Civic. No one wanted a base model Civic, I guess. But I don't know if I buy that. I mean, I'm not doubting what they're saying, but it just seems I can't wrap my head around that with the current economic, environment and just, inflation and everything. Like, and especially the fact that standard feature content is so high that most of these base model vehicles are very nice these days, that you're not sacrificing that much. And so it's really hard to wrap my head around the fact that no one wants a base trim of, these Hondas. But anyway, that's what Honda's saying. Getting back to it here, though, this now makes the sport trim the cheapest Civic. It also means you'll have to be okay with black rims and the sportier look here of the sports if you want to have the cheapest Civic out there. Otherwise, you're going to have to spend $27,000 now for an EX because all Civics are a little more expensive this year. And but even that new Civic Sport gets a little bit of a price bump. So that's now $25,745, including destination. So almost $26,000 for the cheapest Civic now. And that is also the only Civic available with the naturally aspirated motor. Everything EX and up gets the turbo motor now as well. So yeah, we'll see. What this ends up doing as far as the hatch. We do know the hatch also had an LX trim that'll most likely also get dropped. We don't have any info on the 2023 Civic hatches yet, but I just hope they keep the manual around for that, since they're seeing Toyota dropping it out of the Corolla. Hopefully they keep it around for the Civic Sport and also the Sport Touring, but we'll have to see. But one other manual Honda here, a little bit of info about the Civic Si. One other change here for 2023 is you can't get summer tires as a factory option now on the Civic. Previously on the Si, it was a $200 option. It was a great deal. If you're someone who doesn't need all-season tires, you're good with the summers, $200 extra is a great deal. But unfortunately, that's now going away. So the only way to get a Civic Si is with all-season tires here for 2023. But anyway, interesting to hear all that. Mazda has revealed their changes for the 2023 CX-30 this week. And like the 2023 Mazda 3 I covered a few weeks ago, the 2.5-liter four-cylinder gets 5 more horsepower this year for 191 horsepower total, while also getting 2 mpg better for both city and highway ratings thanks to better cylinder deactivation technology. So this is the right direction. The Mazda engineers are giving us more power and better efficiency, which is awesome, and the right direction. Toyota, take note. If you're going to give us more power in the Corolla, hopefully at least keep the fuel economy the same. But anyway, they've also improved the safety here on the CX-30. Even though the 2022 was already the IHS Top Safety Pick Plus, but it now gets rear side airbags and stronger B and C pillars for better side impact crash performance to ensure it continues to be a Top Safety Pick Plus. Because I believe 2023 is when they're going to be starting to do the more challenging side impact test with the IHS and higher requirements there for that test. And so I think that's what Mazda is anticipating here with those improvements there. Also, like the Mazda 3 Turbo, the CX-30 Turbo loses the cheaper base turbo trim, and it's now only offered in the Turbo Premium trim. And that combined with a $700 increase for the new model year makes it $3,300 more expensive to get up into a Turbo CX-30 now. So I guess, again, another one that people weren't going for the base one. Everyone wanted the fully loaded thing, and so they dropped the base one. Anyway, thankfully, the gas model keeps its base trim, and it does go up by $450 for 2023, but that's totally understandable with inflation and stuff. And so anyway, interesting to hear all that. And back to Honda for a minute. This story is kind of funny. So first off, they revealed a few more details here about the new EV they're working on with Sony for a new joint brand. And, there was the Sony Vision concepts that were shown off at CES over the past few years here. And so they say it'll be a premium and high value added product that isn't meant to sell in huge numbers. And while that makes it sound like it'll be expensive, the chairman of Honda Mobility told Nikkei Asia that the vehicle will cost a reasonable amount. And so one pleasant surprise also they revealed is that us here in the US will actually be getting it first, with the Americans will be able to order it starting in 2025, and deliveries will start in 2026 via an online sales process, which I'm assuming is one of the big perks of this new brand that doesn't have a name yet, by the way. It won't be called Honda Sony. It'll be something else. But, you know, that's part of the draw with stuff like this. And I think this is also what, you know, like Volvo's doing with Polestar and things like that, where, you know, you have a new brand and all of a sudden, ta-da, this is a totally new separate thing, so we don't have to worry about going through the dealers. And so this is kind of funny how this is unraveled for the dealers here. So, you know, obviously this is a pretty strong suggestion that they're going to actually bypass the dealers. They haven't confirmed they're going to bypass the dealers and do it online only. But of course, you know, this news has made Honda dealers very nervous, understandably so. But, you know, some of them are really holding out hope that Honda will continue to still sell this new brand under the Honda, you know, franchise dealership network here. And it's kind of hilarious how some of these dealers think that, you know, the general public thinks about dealerships. So first off, the general manager of Paragon Honda in Queens, New York, in this Reuters report, he was quoted as saying, "We have a role that they can't replicate, and that there's no way that Honda wants to hurt their existing dealer body." But I wouldn't be too sure about that. I'm almost certain that Honda sales are certainly being hurt, or at least their brand reputation is being hurt, and their conquest sales by these markups. I've heard that Honda markups are some of the worst. Again, this totally, you know, anecdotal evidence. You know, I have no clue, you know, who actually has the worst markups, you know, by the numbers. But, you know, I've heard lots of complaints about people that, you know, can't get Civic SIs for close to MSRP. And even before the craziness of the 2020s here, you know, the current, you know, last generation Civic Type R, there was crazy markups on those for years. And, you know, so obviously that's typical of any performance model for any brand, but, you know, it's just, I don't understand why dealers think that they enjoy, that, you know, the manufacturers enjoy having their sales hurt by these price gouging dealers. And I even had a commenter a little while back that said that they actually ended up going for an Integra because they could get the Integra at MSRP because it was, you know, they weren't trying to mark up the Integras apparently at the Acura dealer, but it was ended up being cheaper than a Civic Si at the Honda dealer near them because they wanted 10 grand over for that. So it's like, it's just crazy, you know, all these markups and stuff. And so, you know, again, I don't know what Honda really thinks about their dealers. I don't know about any of these car companies. They've never told me what they think about their dealer networks, but I am pretty confident that most manufacturers would love to drop their dealers if they could. I mean, look at, you know, if they could just bring it all in-house and just control the look of the dealerships 100%, control the sales process, control the prices. You know, I think that everyone is very jealous of Tesla's ability to kind of bypass all that stuff. So anyway, yeah, and as far as Sony and Honda's official position here, the Sony Honda spokesperson, officially they're staying vague here. It's saying there's still lots of details to finalize and that selling through dealers hasn't been ruled out. So we'll see what ends up, you know, happening with that. But, you know, my bet is that they're totally going to circumvent the dealers and do something totally separate. And, you know, I think that makes the most sense, honestly, for Honda personally. And, you know, the only hope is, you know, maybe they will allow some dealers to deliver these vehicles, you know, ship them to the dealers if the dealers agree to MSRP. And, you know, maybe that's throwing the dealers a bone by being like, okay, well, you can try and sell people on the stupid wax and protection packages and crap if you want. But otherwise, you know, locking in that MSRP possibly, I don't know. But the one last quote here that's the funniest one of all, in my opinion, is the head of LaFontaine Automotive Group in Michigan, again, in the Reuters report here, is quoted as saying, as much as maybe some people want to push the dealers out, I believe the consumers still enjoy the process of the purchase. And he can believe whatever he wants, but I can guarantee you that no one enjoys paying a markup. No one enjoys the haggling process. Some people might feel like, oh, I got one over on in the dealer. And maybe there's some people that enjoy, you know, trying to duke it out with the salesperson, but most people don't like this haggling thing, which is why I think Tesla's been so successful. And other companies have, you know, gone to similar types of things. And I think, you know, unfortunately they were brands that didn't last long, like Saturn and Scion, to the no haggling thing. But I think that the satisfaction for the purchase process, at least, was pretty high for those brands. And I remember, at least back in the day, hearing good things about the Scion, you know, sales process and how much people really enjoyed that. And, you know, it's so funny that though a lot of these dealers are going to be completely blindsided whenever Honda most likely will be like, yeah, we're selling them online. And I mean, yes, people are excited about the purchasing process of purchasing a new car, but that doesn't mean they're excited about going to a dealership, dealing with people, you know, saying no to a million crappy packages, and finally, you know, getting a car for something they think is a fair price. Like, I think people are excited to buy a new car, like how they're excited to buy a new iPhone. And if they clicked buy online and the car showed up in their driveway on a flatbed a few days later, they would be just as excited about that purchasing process as they would be about driving to a dealership, picking up a car after, you know, a day's worth of, you know, haggling and pulling your hair out. I know that there's some good purchasing experiences. I had a great experience with Sarconi Ford when I just bought the Mach-E, you know, for Beth here, you know, a few months back. They're a dealer that does no markups. They were very nice. And so again, I'm speaking in generalities. There are some great dealers out there that don't, you know, mess with people, that don't play games, that, you know, are honest, just do MSRP deals and all that. I mean, there are good dealers out there. So I'm not, you know, just railing against dealers, but, you know, generally, you know, a lot of these dealers are just price gouging and taking advantage of a situation right now. And I hope that, you know, consumers remember that, and they remember the dealers that were the scummy ones during these years. And, you know, I think it's going to come back to bite them in the butt. And so I think that, you know, this is one of those ways where, okay, you know, Honda's been seeing this stuff, and Honda's probably been pulling their hair out over the past 2 years, you know, annoyed about these practices. And so this is how you do it. You say, oh, we got EVs. I mean, Ford's even trying to do the same thing with their electric stuff and be like, oh, it's a separate thing. And they're trying to get away from the dealer thing. Like every manufacturer, I feel like they are desperately trying to get away from the dealer thing, but there's, you know, these laws are so, you know, set up so it's really hard to get around it. But anyway, I'm not going to, you know, continue on this tangent, but, very interesting to hear that Honda dealers are convinced that they're going to sell this vehicle through the dealers here. I highly doubt it. But anyway, interesting to hear that, and I'm excited to see that, you know, Sony Honda car whenever it does finally arrive. And lastly, I'll briefly cover two vehicles that we won't probably be getting here in the US, but are very interesting nonetheless. So first, Mitsubishi has revealed something pretty impressive here. The XFC Concept ahead of the Vietnam Motor Show that's coming later this month. And they say the production version will first come to Southeast Asia, but they also want it to be a global product, which is why maybe we'll get it here in the States. They certainly could use, you know, some other fresh product aside from the Outlander. So if this thing is compatible with U.S. Market interests and, you know, what American buyers want, then maybe we'll get it. We'll see. But they say it's a compact SUV that is the best suited buddy for an exciting life, and claim it'll also have a class-leading interior space. So that sounds like a very American thing that, you know, people would enjoy. So we'll see. There's no mention of the powertrain, but they say it's going to be debuting in Asia next year with an electric variant coming later as well. So I think it's a nice looking thing. The interior is pretty impressive looking, and you know, could be a great replacement for the Outlander Sport, you know, if they finally do decide to get rid of that, which is also a very old vehicle that desperately needs to be replaced. So hopefully maybe this replaces it. We'll see. For the last news story here though, Hyundai has revealed the 2024 Grandeur for its Asian markets, and it's classy and futuristic here at the same time, both inside and outside, and even has a few cues to the original Grandeur, like the little quarter window there and stuff. So that one debuted back in 1986, and so you'll see some 80s inspired elements like the steering wheel there, which kind of looks like what you'd see on an 80s you know, vehicle with their like very spacey, like single spoke kind of wheels and stuff. So the inside is very spacious and luxurious as well, but still not quite as plush as like the new Genesis G90, for example, because essentially the Grandeur in other markets is sold under the Azera name, which we did have the Hyundai Azera here for a while. I think it went away in like 2018 or something like that. So this is, you know, something that's lower down, but honestly it looks pretty expensive and very, you know, grand as well. But there's no other mechanical details aside from the fact that it's going to be a front-wheel drive based vehicle, but also will probably have all-wheel drive available in some markets. And they say it'll be going on sale in the second half of 2023. And it's just, you know, a shame that Americans don't buy more sedans so they could justify bringing this over, because I think, you know, it might actually do well, as it looks really cool. And if you can get it for a pretty, you know, cheap price, I think it would actually, you know, hopefully maybe be a little bit of a better seller. But I mean, these days everyone just wants an SUV, so I guess Hyundai probably figures why bother. And I'll also briefly add here one other little tidbit is that a viewer named Isaac spotted the new Cadillac CT6 in Pittsburgh as well, which looks great. But sadly, it's also been confirmed that we're not going to be getting the new CT6 here, most likely, because it's being developed just for China, where they still buy sedans in large numbers. And, you know, so, you know, like everything else, like how there's, you know, the Lincoln sedans that are still around in, you know, China. We don't get them here because no one buys them. But, you know, anyway, just cool to see that testing in Pittsburgh, though. So thanks to Isaac for sending that over. And lastly, I just want to give a huge thank you to all of you who are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we didn't have any new members join this week, but I want to give a big thank you and shout out to Thane Bates for being a member now for over 7 months. So I very much appreciate the support. I hope you're enjoying the perks, Thane. And yeah, thank you so much for, you know, your support of the channel here. And for anyone else that's interested in joining and, you know, getting access to those perks and supporting the channel here, there will be a link in the description, as well as join buttons here on the video page and on the channel page. But anyway, that's it as far as all the news this week, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. Please make sure to also like, comment, and subscribe to help keep these videos going here and support the channel in that way as well. But thank you all again, once again, for watching. Please continue to stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.